Okay, picture this. You're stepping out of a dark, damp prison cell, holding a baby in your arms, and you're stepping right out into a crowd of your own neighbors who are just waiting to publicly shame you. Welcome to today's Explainer. We are going to enthusiastically unpack Nathaniel Hawthorne's 1850 masterpiece, The Scarlet Letter. And we're not just doing a surface read here. We are going to use some deep layers of literary analysis to look past the obvious, and what we'll reveal is actually a surprisingly modern heroine. We're going to explore the rich symbolism and those intense, really heavy social dynamics that make this story so incredibly timeless. So let's kick things off with a question that immediately challenges our basic preconceptions about guilt and punishment. I mean, in a world where literally every single misstep is scrutinized, who is actually the real villain? Is it the individual making a very human mistake? Or is it the society obsessed with sin that just mercilessly destroys them for it? Keep that thought in the back of your mind as we go through this explainer together. We're going to peel this novel like an onion today. We'll start with the Puritan world, trace the evolving Scarlet Letter, examine Pearl as a living symbol, explore the contrasting spaces of the scaffold and forest, unpack the hypocrisy of men, and finally, dive into Hester as a proto-feminist. Okay, Section 1, the Puritan world, setting the stage for judgment. To truly understand the stakes of this story, we've got to define the society Hester is trapped in. Puritanism wasn't just your standard Sunday religion. It was a massively strict 17th century Protestant theocracy. Think of a world with absolutely zero separation between church and state. A personal moral failing, something as simple as gossiping or just missing church, could literally result in a public whipping. Absolute unquestioning obedience to God's will, which was conveniently dictated by the men in charge, was basically the only way to survive. And this kind of environment bred some intensely rigid patriarchal power dynamics. Men held all the ultimate authority, and women were expected to be entirely, perfectly submissive. Get this, a woman couldn't even own personal property. Her entire identity was completely tethered to her husband or her father. This forced reliance left women incredibly vulnerable, and public humiliation was the ultimate go-to weapon used by the community to keep everyone in line. Moving into Section 2, the evolving Scarlet Letter, peeling back the symbol. Now, the letter A is probably the most famous symbol in all of American literature, but it absolutely doesn't mean just one thing. Its evolution is this beautiful testament to Hester's resilience. So initially, it's slapped on her as a mark of adultery, an intense public shame. But Hester doesn't let it destroy her. She actually embroiders it beautifully with gold thread, which is this amazing, quiet act of defiance. Then, through her tireless charitable work, the townspeople's perspective completely shifts. The A evolves. It starts to mean able, representing her incredible womanly strength. And eventually, it even becomes angel, symbolizing redemptive grace. She completely flips the script on her own punishment.
All right, Section 3, Pearl, the living symbol.
Hester's daughter, Pearl, is just a masterclass in complex juxtaposition. To the town, she's a product of sin, this chaotic little elf child who runs around throwing wildflowers at her mother's Scarlet Letter. Yet at her core, she is entirely innocent. She's this constant, physical reminder of Hester's guilt, but at the exact same time, she is her mother's greatest source of joy. Pearl really stands out as a wild, untamed contrast to those rigid Puritan rules, and she actively forces both of her parents to eventually confront their true selves. Hawthorne really anchors our understanding of this by literally calling Pearl the Scarlet Letter endowed with life. I mean, Hester actually dresses her in these elaborate, gorgeous red and gold outfits that visually mimic the embroidered A. The town is obviously horrified by this, but for Hester, the child is the literal, living, breathing manifestation of her rebellion, her shame, and her completely untamed vitality.
Section 4, the scaffold and the forest, contrasting spaces.
So Hawthorne uses physical spaces as incredibly powerful metaphors throughout the book. Right in the center of town, you have the scaffold. This is a physical stage literally built for public judgment, harsh exposure, and enforcing those rigid moral codes. It is unyielding and punishing. But if you step outside the town limits, you enter the forest. The forest represents the natural world. It's a place of secrecy and private freedom. It is literally the only sanctuary where Hester and her secret lover Dimmesdale can finally let their guard down, take off the letter, and momentarily escape the crushing weight of their society. Which brings us to Section 5, the hypocrisy of men, the true villains? As we hit the narrative climax, we see this really dark duality in the men surrounding Hester, particularly in her secret lover, Reverend Arthur Dimmesdale.
While Hester is subjected to immense public shame right out in the open, she leans into accountability and develops this absolutely unbelievable moral strength. Dimmesdale is the exact opposite. He's the town's godly pastor, constantly projecting this aura of public holiness. But inside, the guy is being eaten alive by hidden guilt. He's completely paralyzed by private cowardice, literally carving a bloody A into his own chest in secret, yet he refuses to stand up on that scaffold with Hester until his dying breath.
And adding to this incredible male hypocrisy is Hester's estranged husband, Roger Chillingworth. He shows up in town and completely hides behind the respected guise of a wise physician. But underneath all that, he acts as a demonic parasite. Hawthorne calls him a dark miner, relentlessly digging into Dimmesdale's soul. The text uses biblical allusions to describe him as a snake. By allowing absolute vengeance to completely consume him, Chillingworth loses his humanity entirely. In Hawthorne's eyes, this calculated psychological evil is far, far worse than Hester's momentary sin of passion.
Finally, Section 6. Hester the Proto-Feminist, Defying the Patriarchy.
As we look at modern literary analysis, like this academic thesis from Linköping University, it firmly identifies Hester Prynne as possessing a fierce feminist consciousness. And listen, we aren't just taking a modern 21st century view and forcibly imposing it on an old book. The text itself absolutely supports her as a proto-feminist character who completely and utterly defies her oppressive environment. To fully appreciate what a big deal this is, let's define proto-feminism. We are talking about women who exhibited strong, independent qualities and actively fought against patriarchal authority long before there was ever an organized women's liberation movement. Keep in mind, Hester is operating in the 1600s, in a strictly theocratic, male-dominated society where women had zero legal voice. Her self-reliance and her independence are absolutely revolutionary.
I absolutely love this quote. It describes the very first moment we meet Hester. As she's being led out of the dark prison, a male guard actually tries to pull her forward by the arm. And what does she do? She repels him. She steps out into the open air on her own terms, with, quote, natural dignity as if by her own free will. Right from page 1, action 1, she actively defies male physical authority and absolutely refuses to play the role of the passive victim. Rather than being broken or destroyed by the hypocritical men or this hyper-judgmental society around her, Hester triumphantly survives, and she subverts the patriarchy not through violence, but through radical forgiveness, selfless charity, and just an unbreakable spirit. Amazingly, even after leaving the colony, she actually chooses to return years later, voluntarily wearing the Scarlet Letter not as a mark of shame anymore, but as a badge of her own identity and power. She becomes a pillar of strength and a trusted advisor to the very women who once shamed her.
So I'm going to leave you with this provocative thought to ponder. Centuries later, we still live in a world that absolutely loves a public shaming. I mean, just look at the internet. So when the mob comes calling, who are the real sinners in today's court of public opinion? And more importantly, how can we learn from Hester Prynne's incredible proto-feminist strength to survive it? Thank you so much for joining me on this explainer today. Keep learning, keep questioning, and I'll see you next time.